Hello, who I am should be obvious. It's on the title. And I'm not a person who knows a lot about video editing or audio editing. As you can probably tell, I didn't kind of forgot to unmute my mic there for a moment. So, if you guys have any issues with what I'm saying, you can bite me. Okay? Either pose a legitimate argument or shut up. Okay? Because I've been listening to a lot of Trump supporters and a lot of the Republican stuff and a lot of the Democratic stuff. Not so much information on the Democratic side. They're more interested in just doing shit and getting it done. They're more results oriented. When it comes to the Republican Party, bleeding heart pansies is the only thing that I can think of to describe them. I hear a lot of things that say, we're going to be strong again, unified again. That's all fine and dandy. Don't be unified. Because the point of unification is so that people follow line. Which is to say, the way that a lot of people understand these things is that if the Republican Party wins the election, then they follow what the Republican president would say. If the Democratic Party wins, then they get to do the same. That is not how this is supposed to work. Okay? The president is supposed to be the leader of the people, representation of the people. The Republicans are supposed to be the representation of, I think it was corporates or capitalism. Well, Democrats and Republicans represent two different things, okay? Their idea of having multiple people is, and I can't believe I have to explain this to every one of you idiots out there, they're supposed to disagree. The point of disagreeing is to have as many different eyes and outlooks as humanly possible that would be educated to ensure the least amount of bias. I was listening to a lot of the different Republican shit and the anti-Republican shit, and one thing I noticed was people like, this person claims to be bipartisan, this person claims to be yada yada yada. Insert irrelevant information. And I mean irrelevant because either you're Republican or you're Democrat. Nobody gives a fuck. Well, people give a fuck now. I give a fuck now. Mainly because I see the Republicans suppressing the right to vote. Therefore, basically violating the United States Constitution that permits us to vote on things. Personally, if anybody with legal experience hears this, I strongly suggest, if you give a shit about America, you will take a case to the Supreme Court and you will file lawsuits to have them forcibly disbanded. Or, personally, what I would say as a person who makes policies for other people in their sectors or stuff, is that if they are caught suppressing votes, then their amendments, acts, or whatever the fuck they're trying to pass would be forfeit. I would see that as a good punishment for trying to rig an election by suppressing votes or by tactically intimidating people. And those are things that I would see to be a very valuable punishment for violating our right to vote. Okay. Now, I hear a lot of bullshit from the right. They say, like, oh, Hillary has numerous flaws, she's so easy to go after, why can't he beat her? And I'm like, okay, I'm listening. What are those flaws? I get 10, 12 things. I had one guy who was a soldier, he tells me that Hillary kills soldiers. That makes no sense. Okay, but I get the thought process. You are thinking that she conspired with terrorists or other governments to basically try to take soldiers' lives. Now, here's the thing about that makes it completely retarded, okay? Your soldiers who are employed to go into the front lines in the battlefield. The point of technology and advancements in military weapons and armaments is so that you don't die. Okay, so that they can keep sending you into battlefields, so they can hold a front. Okay, and in exchange for your service, they reward you with money and certain perks here and there. That is your reward for serving your country's agenda. And you do not get to complain about going into a battlefield when you are a soldier. If you say, oh, Hillary's, killing soldiers, it's like, explain this. And I've asked people to explain it. Majority of them say Benghazi in emails, which are also invalid because I've looked at the emails. One, I did not see a list or any naming of soldiers. Two, people who were reading it did not quite understand context. Okay. They did not understand that this stuff is basic politics. And what I mean that by is, people see politics as nothing. They don't see politics. They don't understand it. They think, it's evil just to spend one dime on infrastructure. Okay. People do not understand that government actually spends money on people's asses, okay? Then I see about the emails. And I see more about the emails. The main argument I hear is that, oh, she hid them from the people, that means she's bad. The main thing that I don't hear is that, oh, these are government secrets, so they need to be held from the public. Then, I brought that up a few times. And then they're like, well, she got this server that was illegal and people could hack into it. And I'm like, people have hacked into the Pentagon. Okay. People have hacked into the White House. Jeez, people. And they're like, oh, but it's bad because she had her server. And I'm like, that still doesn't mean that she was giving government secrets to anyone. Like, oh, she compromised security. It's like, did she? Because it was a secure server. Granted, it was under attack by hackers, but what server isn't these days? Even PCs and clients. Those clients and servers and all kinds of on the net things have been attacked by hackers. It's commonplace. There's an industry for it. It's like, then they're like, oh, but she didn't employ the right people, and I'm like, and you would know? How would you know exactly? Do you know who it was? Did you do the background checks? No, you didn't. I hear about Benghazi, and honestly, people, damn it, go to Secular Talks and look for Benghazi stuff, okay? It is pretty much detailed as passionately as I would do it myself if I was on the air. It fits very well to how I would reply to that. It's basically that she was found innocent of any wrongdoing 9 times, and more than 2 of those were Republican. Okay, I get you guys want your blood on your little bloodlust slated and all that shit. It's a freaking Salem witch trial. Okay? Last I checked, this was a democracy. So, why do you hate Hillary? I listened to the Trump supporters' interviews. I heard a thing that was laughable about Zionists. I heard a lot of stuff coming from InfoWars. And just to sum that one up, it's I refer to him Alex Juiceboxes Make You Gay Jones, or Alex Lizard People Are Running the Government Jones. This guy is spewing propaganda, and you guys seem more worried about the corporate media doing it? Damn, the double standard. I want to explain bias. So I'll explain bias. I went to talk to a bunch of Trump supporters nearby me, and they all said that he is a businessman who is successful and rich, therefore he must be doing something right. I told them, what about Clintons? The Clintons gave us a surplus. What they said was that the surplus the Clintons gave us didn't count because they didn't have a war. Do you see the double standard there? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of you Trump supporters are not going to. So I'm going to explain it painfully to you, okay? The Clintons gave this nation a surplus, proving that they could sustain and help this government. And Hillary has sustained hundreds of offices in battleground states, while Trump has been barely able to communicate between less than 20. Therefore, she has created far more jobs and maintained them than Trump has. And yet, I find that she is in question, while Trump is begging for votes and making propaganda, saying, oh, I don't know, but people tell me. Feeding the rumor mill. We had a friend in the family, Trump supporter now, became a Trump supporter after the debates. Why? Because she thinks Hillary kills babies. Because Trump accused Hillary of ripping the baby out and killing him day before birth or whatever. What he was describing is most commonly referred to as a C-section. And it is a way of giving birth, not an abortion. And they're like, oh, he'll just employ smart people. You guys believe whatever bullshit you want, okay? You guys believe whatever bullshit you want. There's one thing you cannot do. You cannot say the corporate media is lying. Why? Because they have sound bites, video data. You guys say, oh, they edit it and all that shit. It's like Fox News edit it. Alex Jones edits the fuck out of everything, and you believe him. Breitbart doesn't edit. They don't even have evidence. They just spew crap out their ass. And you believe them. You guys choose people who have nothing to back them up. You believe that Obama is a Muslim who doesn't have this country's interests in heart. And that Hillary is going to be the same way. Even though Obama stabilized this nation after Bush fucked it up. Okay? And you say the media is biased. I hear liberal agenda. This is a distraction. Or there's no substance in this. You know what I don't hear? A point. I hear excuses to undermine, but I do not hear a defense. I hear people basically saying, yes, but I don't want people to listen or hear it because I can't say you're wrong. That's what I hear. Trump says the election is being rigged. I see people walking around with guns who are Trump supporters intimidating other people who would vote against him. I see Republicans hindering Democratic votes, suppressing them, violating our Constitution. I do agree with Trump that people are laughing at our government, because our government hasn't done shit when it comes to holding these people accountable to stop them from doing damage. You know, I firmly believe that the government doesn't do shit unless somebody dies. Okay? And they only do it after people die. Preventive measures, not so much. You know, any half-wit politician who gives a shit about protecting our voting rights would enact a bill in order to prevent legal action. Like all voting ballots, all voting methods would be, you know, like an invalidation. Okay, if, let's say, anybody tries to suppress votes in any way, you know, anything that they do would have to be sent up to the Supreme Courts or whatever court's in charge of that, and it would have to be approved beforehand, all of them. If anybody were to violate this, then they would forfeit their party's vote. Too many violations, and people start losing their position on the chair. Okay, or in the House, or the Senate, or whatever the fuck. They lose their job. Okay. People need to be held accountable for this shit. And what I hear a lot is that, oh, the Democrats this, the Democrats that. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening. What are you talking about? And I hear that they're evil, they're bad, but I don't hear a reason to back it up. I have not seen any evidence to back it up. I've seen, oh, this person has 5 FBI investigations. And I was like, yeah, Trump's has 300 or 3,500 lawsuits in his history. Okay, and he's been investigated continuously throughout this election. More than once. It's like, and then you talk about here's another act of bias, okay? You guys want a outsider who will speak for you. You don't want a politician who will lie. That's great. But you don't understand. Politician, businessman, civilian, militant, etc., they're all human beings. People. And they become politicians based on their rank and based on their experience, their engagement into politics. Okay, so let's say Trump is a businessman. At what point does that make it okay for him to lie his way into becoming a politician? Okay, because effectively he is a politician now. But I get it, you want someone who talks for you. You want someone to have your voice. 16 people into a room, they will all have their disagreements. And you want your voice to be heard, your voice to be said. Well, I can say this much. Trump does not speak for me. And the people voting against him are the people who do not want him. He is not their voice. And these are people, just like you and me. Just like the Trump supporters and all the other people, they are human beings. There is nothing that makes them more special than the others. There is a thing that makes them more in need based on their circumstances, whether or not they can survive on their own. But when it comes to whose opinion is more valid, that depends more on how factually based it is. That depends on whether or not you can actually have a debate. Because all I hear is liberal this, Zionist this, Jewish that, blacks, etc., etc., etc. I hear excuses designed to divide and guilt trip. I hear a lot of people say, you're a Hillary supporter, that makes you bad. You're just trying to save Hillary and all that shit. Well, okay. You're just trying to save Trump. You're just a Trump supporter. See, I can do it too. It's like, oh, you're just pro-establishment. And I'm like, you're anti-American. You're pro-anarchist. See, I'm doing it too. And it's like, you're a communist. And I'm like, you're a fascist. You see, I'm doing it too. My point being is these fucking titles have absolutely no bearing in an argument. When people call Trump a fascist, they call him all this shit. They're not doing it lightly. Some people actually have respect for American intelligence, which frankly isn't worth much now these days. So yeah, I said let's make America great. Let's vote Trump. Yeah, let's see what kind of America Trump has made. Whether or not he disowns or disavows these people or whatever, talks a good fucking game and all that shit. Let's talk about what he does, the impact he makes. Anarchists are rising up, committing acts of terrorism against the state. Mind you, these services are designed to help people, okay? The people in the field enacting these policies, deploying these systems and such, they are not making policy. They are deploying it. They're just your average Joe. They are you, they are me, they are your neighbor, and they are simply trying to make a living doing their job. Okay? So, then I hear this is a nice cup. This is a point I wanted to get to earlier on. This is called a Unity thing that Starbucks is doing. It's a cup. I never looked at this, okay? I held this in my hand, I'm like, oh, it's green. Big whoop, sip, drink, done, garbage. Fuck, I care. That's the way people should see things. And it'd be like, some people more artistic. They're like, oh, this is a nice cup, it's got some art on it. It's nice. It's a fucking cup, people. And you people are so thin-skinned, so eager and needy to hate somebody. There was stuff about them phasing out Christianity. There was stuff on Reddit and Twitter and shit about how the liberals were pushing their agenda by a cup. I didn't even know this cup was like this until I read it on the reports. Until I read people whining about it. I talked to a Trump supporter, and he was talking about this anti-Trump ad he saw in one of the battleground states. And it basically showed Trump saying I could shoot anyone on Fifth Avenue and not lose any votes. It's like, Trump is mocking you, laughing at you, saying like, oh, I could do whatever the fuck I want, take away people's rights, I could kill people, and nobody would hold me responsible for it. That's basically what he's saying. And what I hear out of this Trump supporter's mouth baffles me. He says, oh, Trump's such a badass, everybody attacks him and just washes off him. And I'm like, you realize he's laughing at you, right? I mean, you see that and you're like, oh, nothing affects him. And I'm like, have you seen his Twitter feed? Have you listened to his rallies? All he does is whine and scapegoat and guilt trip and like, oh, it's painful. I used to listen to the Trump speeches through and through, but then it got to a point where I just couldn't fucking stomach it anymore. People are like, oh, he's not racist. It's like, calling Mexicans rapists and murderers doesn't sound just the slightest bit racist to you. And they're like, oh no, he says some of them good. It's like, he whispers it after yelling about how bad they are. And it's like, oh, he can stand up to China and all these people. And I'm like, did you guys even listen to the speech he gave in Mexico at all? And then you guys are like, oh no, they just edited that stuff. It's like, the least you could fucking do is get your head out of Trump's ass and look at the documents before you start fucking judging it. Damn. Biased. God. Guys are like, oh, Hillary's so weak and shit. And I'm like, then I hear about corruption. And like, oh, she gets my money from corporates because she promises them things. And I'm like, do you have anything to back it up? So like, oh, she deleted emails. And I'm like, I delete emails. And it's like, then it's like, oh, she was talking about having two faces, one political, one public. And I'm like, who the fuck doesn't? I mean, can you literally say you don't have a face for your family, and a face for your friends, and a face for your lover, and a face for your school people, or a face for your job thing? I mean, come on, people. Jeez. Out fucking outrageous. I'm going to finish by saying, because I got like 3 megs left on the file size. I do want the system to change. I do believe it has failed. Why has it failed? Because the system is detached. Human beings do not stop in their daily activities. There are equations to understanding right from wrong. What I see, on a majoritively speaking, is that they are very binary. Very how do I say that? Obsolete. Okay. I originally did research back in the day with counselors. And we utilized counselors that were we didn't talk directly to the counselors. We basically spied on sessions. And people would go to these sessions with legitimate problems. And some who would take, like half of them would take the session seriously. And the other half would not. Okay? Counselors we're left with the question. Is this real? Is what they're saying real, or is it not? That's a legitimate question. Because whether or not something's true can tell you, like, what advice to give them. But then we also have the moments where people were oversimplifying it. They forget motive is programmable. Okay? Basically goes to say that I hate you, I want nothing to do with you, we're done. Okay? What makes me hate you? That's something that you don't see a lot of counselors talking about. What makes a person hate? What happened? Is it legitimate? Is it not legitimate? Is it right, wrong? Is it based on facts? Is it based not on facts? People feel things. They can't feel wrong. It's impossible. The human emotions has its own way of translating things based on context. But that context is defined by what a person knows. What an impact it makes. Is it good information? Is it bad information? Because sometimes what normally be bad news is sometimes good news. Like if you ever watch the anime Death Note, he's like, the guy's son is in prison, trying to prove that he's not Kira and all that shit. And in order to prove that, he puts himself in jail and he tries to say, like, it can't be me because people are dying again. The guy tells the other guy, people are dying again. He's like, yeah, I'm happy because it means my son is innocent and all that shit. But, people are dying. It's bad news. It's an anime, mind you, okay? It's not real. But, the context equation is still the same. Still just as valid. It is the relief, kind of thing. It's like what's more commonly when I'm trying to talk with clients in severe cases. They don't want to talk to each other, but if you provide enough leverage, then they do talk. And this stressful situation, which is mostly stressful because of the fight against the conversation, it's a very pleasant situation and always resolves or ends in resolve. But the process of getting up there is what is stressful. Doing it is not stressful. People don't understand context. Context is what makes things right and wrong. For instance, if you kill someone in self-defense, it's self-defense. But how do you define what is self-defense? Well, there's some rules and situations, but how do you know that that situation is true or not? Depends on whether or not you are investigative enough. But then we have the people who are more interested in, the biases and all that stuff. So how do other people know? And so on and so forth, the accountability. It basically comes down to how do you erase the human element without erasing the human element. And there is a way to actually do this. It takes profiling analysis. That's what it takes. Advanced profile analysis allows to the creation of a static equation, which basically is kind of like a sponge. It attaches to things. It's practically meaningless until the x variables and y variables come together and give it value that define innocence or guilt or hostage from robber and all that stuff. I watched a movie where a guy robbed a bank because he was being held hostage and he was told by this captor to rob a bank. So he was a hostage who did what his hostage taker told him, which was a crime. But A lot of people don't understand that. Well, there are complications to things. And then there's more commonly when people are with cops. Trusting cops has gone down way a lot. Some people are afraid, and some people are ashamed. Or there comes the whole facet of emails where a person doesn't always have the capabilities of providing evidence. A person needs to be able to understand factors of life. How does something come about? You can't just say someone's crazy, because then you're undermining other details. It's a bias. You're jumping to conclusions. Or you might be telling yourself that, to make yourself believe that what they're saying is wrong. No, there is a way of correcting this stuff. And then to finish up, because I am over my limit, I hope that you guys get my point. Okay, I doubt you will. Anyways, let's make America great. First thing I would do is get rid of the Republican Party, because I see them trying to bully the Democrats into getting their way, trying to hinder the United States development just to have the Republicans' way. Your job is not to bully each other. Your job is to debate one another and work with one another. Democrats, Republicans alike, in dysfunction, which is to basically say you are supposed to disagree on things in a productive way. Productive criticism. Your job is to find loopholes and plug them. Make the system, refine the system. A lot of people feel the system has failed them. Well, apparently it's the Republicans' fault. Because the Republicans are like, we want this idiot, or we're not going to put anyone on the Senate. Or the House, or whatever. Or if Hillary wins, we're going to gridlock all litigations. I see the Republicans removing polls or voting areas. I get you don't like it, what the Democrats did to Bernie, but just to make it very clear to you, the Democrats didn't take away your right to vote. They just suppressed your knowledge of him. Which, sad as it is, the media does their job, which is to broadcast the progress of the candidates. Every candidate is supposed to make their own micro-government and manage it. And the media is to say who's doing what well and all that stuff. And it's like, I get it, you think the media is biased and all that stuff. The least you could do is take it with a grain of salt. Don't be biased yourself. Okay? Because they hate Trump because of what he's done. And you hate the media because they hate Trump. But you're not looking at them and what their argument is to say, maybe they got a point. I listened to what they said. I listened to what the people say. I especially listened to what the people say. And what the people were not saying was what was the most important to me. And they were not giving me a reason not to vote for Hillary. And they were not giving me a reason to vote for Trump. They were trying to guilt trip me into voting for Trump. They were quoting propaganda and saying if, ands, or buts. far as I can tell, Trump is a terrorist cult leader, and the anarchists are his terrorist warlords, and they're attacking our democracy. What I see is a man who says that only I could win because you don't have the right to make a choice. I hear how Trump says that, you know, they can't possibly win and all that shit. The polls are lying. All facts, all sources are lying. I'm the only one. I'm God and all that shit. I know everything. Everything is as I say it is. Well, I hate to break it to you, Sonny, but the world don't revolve around you, and you are not God. And for the religious people, I have to ask you, how would you know the face of the devil from the face of God? You don't. Which is my point to say, if somebody tells you Hillary's the devil, know when they are the devil. Know when or if the devil is telling you that God is evil. I'm not saying Hillary is God. I'm not saying Trump is. I'm not saying he's the Antichrist. I'm not saying they're the Antichrist. I am saying know when you're being deceived into thinking that the only person being honest to you is the deceiver. Okay. Alright, I'm over my limit. Ask your questions, post your crap, and if you agree with this, spread it around.